Where do you go with your stress? Do you take it out on your husband or wife, or do you take it to your spouse?
Welcome to the Only You Forever podcast. If you want to build a thriving, passionate marriage, we've got the research, the truth, and the answers you've been looking for. And now, here are your hosts, Caleb and Verlinda Simone Gendel.
Hey, everybody. This is episode number 16. We're going to be talking about one of the great benefits of marriage. That's how to use your relationship as leverage to reduce the stress in your life.
Indeed. So how do you see a person doing that?
Well, instead of me taking it out on you, I can talk to you about it. I can tell you about it and get it off my chest.
Right.
And then I'm not carrying it all by myself anymore. It's like two of us carrying the load.
Right. So I think one of the fundamental things about how God made us is he wants us to be people in relationship. And that means taking our stress to each other instead of keeping it internal inside ourselves. We'll talk a little bit about that. But I noticed that, even with the Lord Jesus Christ, one of the things that he did is come unto me, all you that labor and are heavy laden. That sounds like stress. And I'm using this here by sort of application, not in its original salvific context. But he's saying, come unto me, all that are labor and are heavy laden, and I will give you rest. And I think, we're created as beings that can take our stresses to God and also to our spouse, and we can find some rest and relief from that.
One thing, I don't even know if this is what you want to talk about at all today, but one thing that I find, if I'm totally stressed about something and I come and tell you about it and I'm ranting and raving, well, even about today, right? It's like, okay, I'm right here and I'm here for you, but you need to be a little bit quieter. And then you can even point out where I'm, flying off the handle on something that really doesn't matter. And you just put some perspective on it. And I can realize that, maybe that's not as big a deal as I thought, or this is a big deal and I need to handle it, or whatever.
Right. So we can bring each other context.
Yeah.
And, so it's sort of inviting your spouse into that safe harbor. That, the safe space where they can vent, they can be themselves, they can express all their frustrations, but you're also kind of helping them defuse or come back down to earth a little bit too.
Yeah.
In the same thing. So Gottman, researcher that we quote quite a bit, said that couples who buffered their relationships from external stresses were able to maintain their positive changes over time.
What does that mean?
So when they're growing as people and when they're growing in their marriage, one of the functions that contributes to that and to that marriage growth is buffering your relationship from outside stresses. So putting things into place where you can actually bring that stress level down.
Oh, is that what buffering it means?
Yeah. It's just creating a safety zone from stress, right? So we get stress from the world and we can get stress from each other. We can get stress from our circumstances. We can have internal stresses, all sorts of stresses. But if we can find each other as a resource to help diffuse stress, that's actually going to help us grow as a couple.
So how do we do that as a couple?
Yeah. So I think one of the simple things to that is just talking it out.
Which is easy for a woman.
Yeah. Yeah. So as a guy, I've noticed that I carry the capacity. I've talked to other guys about this. In fact, I was texting a buddy last week, and there's just that temptation you want to carry it yourself.
You want to protect me from it.
I want to protect you from the stress. So I'm going to hold this all inside myself. And as he said, instead I just take it out on them. He was talking about his wife and family in anger and harshness, right? So he recognizes that he was doing this.
Stressed.
And I've found myself doing the same thing. And so at that point, at least subconsciously, that there's stress inside Caleb.
Yeah, absolutely.
Right. So you're aware of that. So, if the stress is in the room, let's talk about it.
Right.
Rather than just leaving it as anger and frustration, because who better a person to talk to than the one person who should unconditionally love and accept me?
Yeah.
Right.
Yeah.
So when we're talking about stress in this, we're not talking about the stress of relationship issues. Like if our marriage is stressed, that's kind of we'll go down a different road with that subject matter. But I'm just talking about if I have stress at work or in life somehow, not our problem.
Right. Yeah.
Our problems, right?
Yeah.
So a lot of times, guys, especially in this, what were you going to say there?
You're just going to want to solve it for me.
Yeah, that's right. That's what I was about to say. I want to solve it. I want to talk about guys, but I'm the same. It is the first thing I want to come back with. Well, here's your solution. You got to do this, this, and this. And how does that make you feel?
I just wanted to talk. I just wanted you to listen. and you don't even know the whole situation yet, how do you know the answer?
Well, because
you're male.
Yeah, we're all about solutions, baby.
Yeah. Yeah.
So
I don't know if we want to talk about this online, but there was a situation that happened at work. Something inappropriate happened. And I told you about it, and I kind of got no response. And inside, you were like, solution, 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 solution. And you were like 4 steps down the road. And I felt totally, I don't even know what the word is I'm trying to say. Like you almost
Unheard.
like you didn't care or you didn't hear me.
yeah,
Because you'd gone into solutions mode and you already had it all figured out. And do you know what? You took care of it, and
I did have it figured out.
you did have it figured out.
But that's not what you needed
no,
right then.
I just needed my husband to I don't know what I need you to be, but be there and listen and understand.
That's to
Like
listen
what we
to
talked about in our last podcast.
to listen to understand, right?
Yeah.
No, I think gals, though, I think women go down a different road, because
Yeah.
when I got issues, you'll jump right on board with them.
Hey, we're not condemning me here, right?
Oh, we are. This is an eye for an eye on this podcast.
Okay, keep going.
Well, I think generally gals will criticize or complain. So they'll get on, you know what, your boss is a jerk, and you'll get on board with it, right?
It's the mama bear comes out.
And you'll join with me,
Yeah.
right? But that's not what I need either.
You need a
I don't need you
diffuser.
feeding my fires,
Yeah.
right? Mm-hmm. And you'll make my stress your problem. Mm-hmm. So the wife will often make husband stress her problem, right? At the end of the day, I need the same thing too, which I need you to listen to understand.
Yeah. Yeah.
Because remember, I got all the solutions. Right? Yeah.
I won't agree
Next
there.
point.
Yes.
So, listening to understand, but I think another part of this too is that I forget, or sometimes I even forget to ask you for, is we probably both had stress in our day. So don't think you got the corner on it, right? And sometimes you kind of, I found myself hearing you out, and then I'm like, boy, I don't even want to tell her about my day now. It's, double trouble.
Yeah.
But there has to be a place in the relationship to exchange roles.
Yeah.
So we both get the opportunity to go through that process and talk to each other.
Yeah.
Now, I was suggesting in here that, it might be a good idea to check in.
What does that mean?
In this conversation, just check in with with your spouse and say, when you're defusing, you're talking to your stress out and so on, for me to check in and say, hey, do you feel understood?
Mm-hmm.
But
I think that would be hard to do without it sounding pretty corny.
or clinical.
Yeah.
So what's a better way?
I don't really know.
Okay.
I'm sure I do it perfectly. What do I usually do?
Well, maybe you don't even need to verbalize this all the time, but I think there is.
Or do I am I understanding this right?
Yeah. Am I understanding you right? Or
Yeah.
yeah. Or maybe if there is just that active listening that we talked about last time, where you're responding with some feelings and you're helping them to clue in, then you don't even need to be as explicit with this question, but I think you want to be sure, at least intuitively, that your spouse feels that you're listening, you're engaged, and you've got them. Mm-hmm. Because feeling understood by another person feels really good, and that just helps you calm right down.
Yeah. Going back to the guys thing about finding solutions.
Yeah.
You know what? Sometimes I've had to go, I just need you to listen.
Yeah. Asking for it outright.
Yeah. And I don't think that's a bad thing. Like, rather than blow up and get mad and
Yeah.
whatever, like, do you know what? Can you just listen?
It is. Because it was Freud. Freud had some pretty whacked out ideas with his psychoanalysis and some funny stuff, right? But the one thing Freud did bring to the world, which was really valuable, was the idea of the talking cure. Which just says, if I'm talking this out, it's going to cure. It's going to help.
Okay.
Just verbalizing.
Yeah.
And I think that, never mind all the listening skills and yada yada even, just
Right,
talk
just
it out
getting it
and
out.
I will stay engaged and hear you out. Yeah. So what stops this from happening? We talked about one thing, which is I think guys have this responsibility, maybe more so than women, where they feel like they got to protect their family from the stress. It's like, I can't bring this home. I got to just deal with this myself. So it keeps me from sharing with you, right?
Yeah. Or as we talked about in the fears of intimacy, the fear of dependency.
Right.
Like, I can't depend on anybody. I have to face this alone.
Need to stand alone.
Yeah.
Yeah. So we got to watch those messages or scripts that we have that keep us from doing this. Mm-hmm. And we think they make it stronger, or they preserve or keep, but they, we're bringing our issues to each other deepens our intimacy, not the opposite.
Absolutely.
Yeah.
Yeah. Do you know what? The times that you haven't shared your stress, it's been like a I'm not trying to blame you. I'm sure I've done the exact same thing, but it's been like
Feels like a
wall. And it's like pushing me back, and I don't know what's wrong. So I'm trying to give you space, and all you want is some comfort. And
Probably makes you feel some insecurity too.
yeah, it's kind of like a cycle, but facing it and naming it and stepping towards it.
That's the hard stuff, but it's the good stuff.
Yeah.
Okay. Let's throw some other ideas out there. So one of Verlinda that I was listening to Sexy Marriage Radio, which is a great Christian podcast centered on the whole subject of physical intimacy. But one of the hosts there, Shannon, I'm not going to try to guess her last name. She was talking about a situation that came into their lives where there was a great deal of stress all of a sudden. And they were talking about sex for comfort and just about how the sex that a married couple has can have so many different languages and expressions. And one of those options, one of those possibilities that's perfectly valid is for it to be a comforting expression of love. So after a stressful day, just connecting in that way, that can help diffuse stress in the marriage as well.
Yep, absolutely.
What are some other ideas or things that you've helped you or you've seen help other married women or?
Well, pampering.
Yeah.
Like I was staying at someone's house, and, you know, after a long wedding and everything else, all he wanted to do was go to sleep, and she's wound up and her feet are killing her. And she's like, can you just give me a foot rub?
Right.
You know, and that just helped her wind down. She was able to sleep.
Yeah.
I mean, an obvious one for me is popcorn.
Popcorn.
When I'm stressed, feed me popcorn. What about for you?
For my personality type, you know, talk it out, but then I need some downtime alone processing time
Yeah.
too.
Or you need to just go and have a nap.
Sometimes
and then
I
work
have
on
a
it
nap
afterwards.
and then,
Yeah, absolutely.
that works as well. So we all have our different ways. And I think that's part of learning each other's,
What makes us tick?
Yep.
Yeah.
That's good. So we have some core values in behind her that I wanted to touch on, Verlinda, to share with our listeners. One thing is that our marriage should be a safe harbor. So it's always a place that you can come home to, that's protected, is sheltered, is preserved. And no matter what happened out there on the ocean, the boat can come in.
Yeah.
And this is a place of reparation and recovery and rest and welcome, and where you can be vulnerable about, you know, all the scary stuff of the stress out there in the storm, but come back and feel safe.
Yeah.
Is that fair?
Yeah, absolutely. Yep. I agree.
Part of that is the non-judgmental approach to each other.
Yeah.
So when you come in, I'm not judging you. I'm not condemning you. But at the same time, I think you have to offer honest, supportive feedback. Because sometimes we do handle stuff wrong in life, right? And you've said to me, or I've said to you, you know, let's own what's kind of yours, but here's the stress problem that's separate, right?
Right. Yeah.
And because it is the safe harbor, you can receive that without feeling attacked
Yeah.
or unsupported.
Yeah. The non-judgmental piece, I think, is really critical, especially for wives. Like, it's so easy to get into criticism mode.
Yeah.
And that's not what our husband needs. Like, he needs that safe spot to be able to talk and vent.
And still be loved.
Yeah.
And it just kind of grounds me again.
Yeah.
I know for us. And I think too, Verlinda, it's a great opportunity to create a togetherness. So that's taking the problem that's out there, and we become a we looking at the problem.
Yes.
Or an us.
Yes.
And not a me in that. It's okay, there's two of us now.
Right.
Yeah. Which takes us to a great little passage of scripture in Ecclesiastes chapter 4.
Ecclesiastes. Ecclesians.
Oh, that's a new one.
Yeah.
Ecclesiastes 4:9-10. Two are better than one, because they have a good reward for their toil. For if they fall, one will lift up his fellow or his wife, or vice versa.
Spouse.
Yeah. But woe to him or her who is alone when he falls and has not another to lift him up. So, you know, this is a real advantage of and privilege and benefit of being married, I think, that we can use.
Absolutely. Yeah.
Okay, let's go over to our question segment now.
And now for our Q&A section. Remember, if you'd like to ask us a question, you can email it to questions@onlyyouforever.com, or please leave us a voicemail at onlyyouforever.com/questions.
So we have another anonymous question here. It says, how do we ask our husband to do things without treating him or making him feel like a child?
Okay. So I tried to pull this apart a little bit in my mind, and I hope I got it right. I think he was going in one of two directions, maybe both. One is...
I think it would be a she.
She,
asking
sorry.
her husbands.
She's feeling disrespected because he's ignoring her request. So she's actually asked this before, and it's not happening. And now she feels like he's another one of the kids. She has to get after him and remind him.
Okay.
That could be one possibility. I'm not sure. Or she's saying, I think you should know that this is your job. Now, why do I have to remind you?
Right. Because you should know better.
And again, that's how I picture her possibly feeling like she might treat him as a child.
Right.
Okay. So if I missed it, just send in another question. We'll try it on another podcast. But just rolling with that, going to the first one, where she could say, I'm feeling disrespected because you're ignoring my request. So she's feeling like he's not responding, not complying, or
right.
That's just going into a black hole, the request, right?
Yeah.
So I would say to you first as the wife, what's within your reach is changing yourself. And I'm going to ask you the question, are you sure you're not using woman speak? Like, does he know?
That you want him to do this?
And your initial reaction, he knows, right? But seriously, is it a clear request? Or is it like, boy, it'd sure be nice to have someone take out our garbage weekly, wouldn't it? When you're joking about having a maid.
Right.
It's got to be a clear, let's just make sure it's a clear signal to him. And then ask some direct questions of him, but start them with I. So say something like, and just put this in your own words, obviously, but I'm feeling ignored or I'm feeling disrespected when you just grunt and don't take action. So let's cut to the issue of what's happening. You're talking about behaviors. You're not criticizing his character. You could ask him, the way I ask you, does that bug you? Or what's keeping you from taking out the garbage? Do you want help? Am I asking too much? So asking questions. What do you think of that, Verlinda?
I think that's good. Because then it can be like, am I doing something wrong here?
Well, it's a little bit of the same thing
to make this
we've had of going for understanding, right?
Yeah.
Yeah. So that's one thing. Now on the second option where she's thinking, he should know to do this. We do have a coaching exercise on this, which is interesting. So if you want to hear more about that, we can talk about that. But it's often just about our role expectations that we came to the marriage with from our family of origin. Now, you and I had to go around on this.
Yes.
We did. On the repair of vehicles, right?
Yeah. Yeah.
So in my family, whosever car it was, they took it to the dealership on their errands and they got it looked at and dealt with and they made their arrangements, right?
Yeah.
So it was kind of mom's car and there's kind of dad's car. Now in your
Whereas
family.
in our family, dad was like dealt with the mechanic. Mom might run it to the shop when the appointment was made.
Yeah.
But
he arranged
dad
everything,
picked it up and talked to the mechanic and found out what was wrong and did all that.
So we ended up having a discussion 2 months ago, 15 years into our marriage, of having vehicles.
Because I was waiting for you to make an appointment to get the oil changed.
And I'm sitting there thinking, why doesn't she just take the van in? Like, it's there. She knows where to take it. So that was, what came out. Now, is your family better than mine or mine better than yours? That's not even the issue. It's just we brought those expectations in. We never actually figured out what our role expectations were. So we had a discussion about that.
Yeah.
And I'll never make that mistake again.
Oh, shut up. I don't even remember what the conclusion was. Anyhow, this is not about us here.
No, but it's the same thing, right? In your family of origin, what were the expectations? Is he just doing something? He's not doing something that your dad always did?
Right.
Possibly.
And in my mind, I could be going like, good grief. It's 2 months overdue.
Yeah.
I shouldn't need to ask him again.
Yeah. So,
okay. Yeah.
Again, I'm going to go back to Verlinda. Ask the questions. I feel like I'm disrespecting you by constantly nagging about this, but what's making it hard for you to take my van in to get it fixed?
Right. Or our conversation was more like, what did your family do? Because in my family, my dad always did it, but I've noticed that you don't do it.
Yeah, but I think before that, you and I, it was either you or me, like, why aren't you getting this dealt with? That's how it started, right? Like,
that was in my head. I didn't think I actually verbalized it.
I can't remember exactly, but
I probably did.
Hopefully that's of some help.
Yeah.
So just think about your family of origin issues, and then just think about whether, the expectations, even outside of the family of origin, are clear as well.
Yeah.
Is that good?
Yeah. And do you know what? Even if it's not, like your husband's not doing anything wrong, if that's not the case, you can just ask for something in a respectful way. Mm-hmm. And it shouldn't make him feel like a child. No,
there's stuff in the running of family life that I wasn't aware that I should be doing or knew how to do or whatever. And I'm, just show me, ask me, educate me if you need to, and I'll do it.
Yeah.
Because we're in it together, right?
Yeah.
So sometimes a little bit of that is needed too.
Yeah.
All right. Hopefully that helps. That's all that we have for today's episode. Remember, you can get the full show notes at onlyyouforever.com/16. And remember, we're here to help build thriving, passionate marriages. So send us your marriage questions in to questions@onlyyouforever.com.
Thank you for listening to the OnlyYouForever.com podcast. Please help us reach and influence a wider audience by rating and reviewing our podcast at OnlyYouForever.com/love. Thanks for listening, and we'll see you next week.